Hurrah! Okay. Hopefully you can hear me now. And that all works. Can you hear me all now? Please tell me you can hear me. Yeah? Everyone good? You got me sound? Hopefully you have. Sorry about that. I just had to restart the live stream. Bit of audio issues going on here. Okay, right. Let's get straight back into this. This is a live stream and things go wrong all the time. It's fine. First live stream of 2021 as well. So there we go. Right, this one I'm going to be showing you how I remix. And yeah, you can hear me good. That's all good. That's cool. Wicked. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to show you how I remix. I'm going to show you how I remixed a tune that I made in October. Came out last week, I think it was. This is a track by a group called Yumi And The Weather. And I was asked to do this remix. I did it in about a day. I was quite happy with it. Didn't use any modular, didn't use any hardware. Did it all in a box. I had to work pretty quick. And you can listen to this now. It's on all the streaming platforms as well if you're not aware of it. You can also go check it out on my Bandcamp, which I was trying to show you earlier. Over here you've got I've just set this up, by the way. You can download, you can stream from here my latest release, all the releases that I'm going to be putting out this year. I'm putting out one track every single month, and some of those tracks will go on streaming platforms, some of them will be exclusive to Bandcamp. If you're interested as well, you can join the VIP membership, which gives, for £3 a month, you get all the music that I release this year. You also get the remix that I've done recently, my last release, Velocet and Loop, all these live streams that I've done at high quality mastered audio as well that I've done over the past few years, which is much better quality audio than you're going to get on YouTube. You also get my album Detached that I did under the name Matthew Hodson a few years ago. And there'll be a new track added every single month. There'll also be some exclusives on there as well. Some remix, some live sessions as I go on. So if you're interested in that and you want to support me, please do head over to my Bandcamp page and subscribe. It's £3 a month. I'd make it less if I could, but that's the minimum Bandcamp make you do. £3 a month. It's nothing. Really, I just want to I want to be able to give something to you guys every single month, and I thought this was the best way to do it. Some of it's going to be on streaming platforms and some of it isn't. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into what this is about today, which is about that's the one we want. Looking at how I do remixing. So I'm going to show you my approach to all of this, and I did this remix actually in Ableton. It's probably the last track I did in Ableton before I then went over to Bitwig. Still use Ableton, still love Ableton, but Bitwig, I must admit, I'm enjoying a lot at the minute. If you're not familiar with this track, I'll just play a little bit of it now, and if you've got any questions as well, if you're here joining me live, the cool thing about this, you can ask me questions as we go along and get involved. But I'll just play a little bit of this track from about here. Okay, I won't play it all, but hopefully you get a vibe for that. Please do let me know if there's any issues with the audio as we go on. Let's jump in. Now, I was sent over the stems for this, and there's loads of stuff that I was given. I was given all in audio. I was given a BPM. The BPM I've got is 151. I think it's a bit quicker than the original. There's synth parts, there's shakers parts, there's guitars, there's drums. And I was given all these things as just stereo files, basically. So the drums, for example, let's see if we can hear these on their own. Sort of rock drums. This is the original track. Lots of backing vocals. Bass guitar. And so on and so forth. So when I start remixing stuff, what I like to do is find really interesting loops and just create a vibe from there. I don't really have a concept in mind. I just basically go for it. I do like to push things to the limits. I like to make things quite extreme. And in this case, when it drops, you get a big bass line. There's a lot of sub. There's a lot of distorted square bass going on and that kind of thing. So let's see what I've actually done. And we'll start at the beginning. And this was the thing that got me going. And what I did, I took this vocal segment, put it into the sampler, and basically I found a really interesting loop. I didn't know what timing it was. I just found it an interesting loop. And you can see that it actually starts, the loop starts here. That's the start point. Every time it gets a MIDI trigger, that's where it starts. And then it loops a bit later. And then when it gets to the trigger again, it goes back to a different part of the loop. So you get a bit more of a dynamic. I put some reverb on afterwards without it. Yeah, getting asked about drum loops and how I build that up. I'll get onto drums in a second. There's just something about this. I like this vibe. This was good for me. And then what I did, I built up on top of that and added more of this kind of stuff. Two tracks of this. And a third one, which is quite quiet. And it just creates this vibe, this atmosphere that allowed me to start building a track, basically. If I drop that back into the track, you'll hear what it's doing. Drums at the minute, I've just got this kick. It's not a powerful kick, it's just there, just ticking along. And then when it drops, I take out a lot of these vocals and bring in the bass. Bass we'll look at in a minute. In fact, if I go to this view, you can see basically this is where I start doing all the remixing. This is my sort of playground. This is where I start playing with stuff. And I'm not even thinking about arrangement when I'm playing in this segment over here. I'm just literally playing around with stuff, trying to come up with ideas. So here is that loop that I've got going on, and the other two vocals. These other backing vocals as well. I mean, I love the vocalist. I love her voice. Ruby's got a lovely, lovely voice, and I knew that's really what I wanted to use a lot here, but not necessarily the melody. I wanted to use it as a kind of as a pad, as something a bit more abstract, a bit more experimental, basically. So the sampler features quite heavily, the Ableton built-in sampler, playing around with that, finding interesting loops. As we move on, we go back to this view, and this only came about, by the way, by jamming. Once I got stuff done in this view, I then came back to this view and just jammed it out, just like I do in my live streams. You know, I come up with ideas and then I go into this view and I just jam it out, basically, and come up with a structure. Then I go in and do the detail as well. There's guitar that features on this track as well, which we've got here. I think these might fade in by the looks of it. Don't sound like guitars anymore. So what have you done there, Mr. Matthew? What have I done there? So here's the guitar going through Valhalla and a compressor. That's what the guitar's doing. Bit glitchy, time stretched it, doesn't sound great. Put on the old Valhalla shimmer. And you get that. And the compressor that I put on after it is just basically sidechaining from the kick, which later on is when the kick comes in. And you get the ducking going on, basically. Loads of ducking, loads of reverb, basically. Masses of reverb, masses of ducking, and then you just get this. Big sound going on. What else have we got going on? There was some shaker that I started with as well. That's not in the mix anymore. And there are some pads which come in later on a track, which we'll look at. Oh, there's even some more vocals here, actually. Is it vocals? No, this is a tiny, tiny little segment here of a synth line. And the one thing that I was going to add to it was a contact instrument, but I didn't in the end. Why didn't I use that? I think I was going to use this Olafur Arnold's kind of string piano sound and add that to everything, but in the end I took it out. It didn't need it. I don't even remember what it was playing now. Let's have a look. Sounds a bit cheesy. Yeah, I can see why I took that out. It's not great. So that's the build up. There's some heavy bass going on as well in the intro. And this bass is my favorite Native Instruments monosynth, the Monarch. And I'm just using 2 oscillators here. The second one's quite quiet. The third... Oh no, I'm not using the second one. The third one I am. Going through the Echo Boy. Love the Echo Boy. Without it. And with it. Going through the press work by Yumi. I love this compressor. If you're not familiar with this compressor, go check it out. You get these different types of compressors, and there's a limiter in there as well. And I'm just hammering it, absolutely hammering it through here. And using some sidechain compression later on as well. Now, the bass is really important because when you get this big drop, got all that going on, all this bass. And that is Monarch. As far as I remember, it's all Monarch. So you got this one bass line doing this sound. A bit more subby, a bit more rounded. But the main one that really sticks out that everyone hears when it drops is that. Again, it's Monarch. I'm only using one oscillator by the looks of it. Yeah. And that is being fed through Echo Boy, of course. Now the Echo Boy has been it's being used quite subtly, but what it's doing, it's widening out. It's really widening out the stereo image of the bass. Just realised you can't see the plugins for some reason whenever I'm opening it up. Let me see if I can sort that out for you actually. You guys need to see this over here so you can see the plugins that I'm using, and you should be able to see these plugins now. Let me just resize that. God, so many things going wrong tonight. Don't worry folks, I've got everything under control. I know what I'm doing. There we go. So you should see now when I go to my plugins, you should now see the Echo Boy. Yeah, there it is. Brilliant. Sorry about that. So, like I was saying, I'm using this Echo Boy just a little bit, just to widen out that bass sound. Just kind of stereoize it. I've took a lot of the top end off, but there's still quite some rich harmonics going on there. Smashing it through the press work. Look at it. They don't tell you to do that. But a lot of those extra harmonics are coming from the Devil Lock, which you've seen me use in live streams quite a lot before. Just crushing it, absolutely crushing it. And then going through the sausage fattener. So I'm absolutely smashing this sound. When you add that to the subby one, and this one. It just builds up a nice big sound. The vocals come back in. This time I think I brought in even more sort of backing vocals here. Going through compressors for side chaining. There's 3 of them. One's left, one's right, and one's in the center. And they're going into the Yumi Saturn. And I'm using this to kind of soften them, get some tape sort of softening going on, some tape compression. So there's the kick, and that comes in after the drop. Before that, you've just got the normal kick drum from the drums that I was given, which is really, really quiet. And I've gone for that rhythm. Dun, 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 dun. Instead of a straight 4 to the floor, this is what the kick drum's doing. So you got 1, 2, 3, like that. It just adds a bit of sort of anxiety to the track. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 kick drums layered up. The first one is polyplex, and this is a sample from within that, distorted because it's going through the sausage fattener. Using a lot of sausage fattener recently. Second kick drum is this one, which is a sample that I've loaded in, already distorted, already some a kick drum that I'd worked on before. Oh, I'm being asked, did I record the vocals or obtain them? They were given to me. Everything was given to me basically, and I worked with that. There's a third kick drum, which is again polyplex, being absolutely smashed by the sausage fattener. It's really not letting it breathe. It's just constantly like a drone almost. But you're getting a click. You're getting a transient. And the fourth one is still distorted, but it's got a real, it's like someone hitting a punch bag. Again, polyplex. And you add those all together, and they're pretty full on. We've got some hi-hats, which are open hi-hats, basically some samples. Just kind of sounds like a normal drummer pedaling, but then there's some second hi-hats that are a bit quieter. Which don't really sound like hi-hats, they're just more like weird sounds. Add them together. You can't even really hear that one in the mix, but I know it's there. Guitars. So the singer Ruby, she plays guitar in the band, and when you listen to the original song, the guitar's and the bass has got this particular melody going on. Now I found a weird loop in the guitar. I took the audio and I found this weird loop, and it's even got like a knock to it. Oh yeah, these fade in. You hear that knock? And that knock sort of emphasizes the kick drum, the one, and some people will try and EQ that out, but I thought I'd use that to my advantage. And then I took the same guitar lines and I basically pitched them up 1, 2, 3 different times to give you different, basically, transposition of them. So you get... Now we've got this snare, and this snare was taken from the original recording as well, as far as I'm aware. I think that's how I got it. I've just layered that underneath everything. It's quite an important part of the sound. Drums now from the original ones, just doing 4 to the floor, but it's very quiet, very subtle. And then this was the magic bit for me, really. The track is very minimal. The remix is very, very minimal, but I brought the pads in as it needed something, otherwise it was going to be too repetitive. And these pads that come in, just chopped up and looped, heavily sidechained, and they kind of come into the track, but they don't become overbearing. They're kind of quite subdued. Then we get these extra drums coming in a sort of drop, and you'll notice that I automated the filter cut off of the bass just before we went into the drop. I usually do that a lot. When there's going to be a change in the music, I usually open or close a filter. It's just a way of letting the listener know there's a development and there's potentially a change, something going to happen. Something does happen here. We drop out the guitars, and then this extra drum pattern comes in. Which does this. And if you're listening on headphones, you'll hear that that extra drum loop is kind of going left to right. It's playing around with the stereo image quite a lot. We then build it all back up, and it kind of repeats itself again for the second time. So that's it in a nutshell. I mean, it's a very, very simple approach to the remix. It doesn't actually use any of the kind of lyrics, the melody from the original. I stayed away from that. Some record labels, they do say to you, we want the original vocals in there. We want it to kind of really play on that lyrical content. But for me, I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to work on the vibe. I wanted to work on reverbs and the sort of using the voice more as a pad and experimenting with that rather than, you know, rather than making it sound too literal, I suppose. Is there any questions at the minute in the chat room? Let me just check over here as well, see if there's anything. And thanks for joining us. There's quite a few watching now. Hey Paul, thanks for joining us as well. Yeah, as I said, all the audio is basically what I was given. If you missed this at the beginning, they're the stems that I was given over there. I dragged it into here. This is my little playroom. This is where I find interesting loops, things that work together. And then when I was kind of happy with stuff working over here, and I had a vibe going here, then as you know in Ableton, you go over to this view, you hit record, and you record that in. This was me then bringing in more vocals. Bringing in the guitars. Bringing in a few more vibes. And then dropping loads of stuff out. Now, one of the things that I did do, once I'd recorded things into here, I go in and I do a little bit of detail. And you'll notice just before it drops, I take everything out just for this little section here. But I let Ruby's breath, I think it's just on this track, you'll hear her breathe. She just takes that breath, which was taken from the vocal take. And it was just before she starts singing, she takes a breath. And I really like that because it just adds that dynamics before everything drops. And it's nice to do that rather than just dropping and straight going into the drop. It's nice to add that little bit of a, you know, a hang there, strip it all back to a voice, take away all that reverb and stuff, and then just lay it down with all the big bass going on, basically. So, like I said, there's 1, 2, 3 different basses going on, all slightly tweaked in different ways. Lots of reverb on the guitar, cutting that up. Finding an interesting loop that's even got a weird kind of knock in it and then transposing it for different sections. The kick drum, that's not it there. The kick drum is made up of several kicks, 4 in fact, layering them up. Vocals, this is pretty much running all the way through. The guitar turned into a pad. And now for some bonus content as well. Mastering. Now I did this and I tend to master all my stuff before it goes out. I've just found a way that I like working with the audio when I'm mastering, and I think I learned this from Yoad. If you're familiar with the Sonic State podcast that was sometimes on together, I think I learned about this from a video he did, I think. And this is what I have on the master, and you've been listening to everything going through this. What I do is, first of all, I turn things down by about 6 to 10 dB, and then I send that into a bus compressor, and the bus compressor is just going to be tickling the top end basically with a quick release, just that much. It's doing enough. Now the real thing that I really love is then adding some EQ, and not just EQ over the stereo mix, but actually well, it is over the stereo mix, but I'm EQing the mid and the sides separately. And this, when I learned to do mid-side EQ, I was just like, where has this been all my life? It is so useful. And this plugin, the HEQ by Waves, which I bought in Black Friday recently, you can actually solo the mid and the side and give them both different EQing, and you can listen to them. So if we listen to the side, it sounds a bit weird on headphones because you're just listening to the sides, and I brighten that up, and I've actually brought out quite a lot of bass, quite a lot of low end in the sides, which are over, you know, you've got this bass rumbling basically in left and right. And then in the mid, very subtle low end emphasis, and emphasizing the top end as well, which sounds like this. And then when you add them together, if I bypass this, it sounds dull, doesn't sound very wide, and when you add it back in, suddenly goes wide, it's bright. Now the next part of the mastering chain goes into the L3 multi-maximizer, and this I didn't spend too long on it. I'm just kind of caning the low end and keeping that under wraps, because there's a lot of sub, a lot of kick drums going on, and I just wanted to make sure that doesn't get too overbearing. So I've just pulled the threshold down, minus 8.4, and you'll see that it's working mainly on the low end here. And if I bypass it, that muddiness is always there. And if I add the L3 back on, it allows the brightness to come through. Without it, with it. And then finally, the L2 at the end, and I'm just tickling, I'm very much tickling what's going through this, and you'll see there's not a lot of dynamic range. When you look at the waveform of this, it is pretty much squared off. It's not distorting, but there's not a lot of dynamic range, and this really helps with that. Just tickling it. And if I take this mastering chain off, that's what it sounds like. Add it back on. Okay, a few questions here before we finish up. Do I have any favourite reverbs by DJ Chimera? Hey, thanks for joining us today. The reverbs that I'm mainly using are the Valhalla stuff, although I did recently buy the Waves H-verb, which is really good. I'm using that now. But the Valhalla stuff is just, yeah, it's awesome. What else is there? The EQ, yeah, Adam, I'm glad you agree. That EQ does really open it up for sure. And it does make a big difference for sure, Paul. Yeah, you can hear that. Any other question? Yes. So Azio Hedge, you use Isotope Ozone for mastering. Now, that's a great program. Isotope's great. That program does so much. The thing is, I don't really understand what it's doing all the time. This very simple chain of tickling it with the bus compression, middle and side EQ, using the L3 as a multi-band compressor, and then using the L2. Actually, they're both limiters, I think, the L3 and the L2. Just makes sense to me. And I know how I can get that sound, basically. My new single that's coming out, in fact, all the singles that are going to be coming out this year, once every month, is mastered in this same way. I'm doing it all myself. The only reason I might send it off to a different person to master is if it's going on vinyl. If it's going on vinyl, then you need to be careful with your low end, what's going on with the low end, to make sure that it works on vinyl, basically. And I'm not able to test that, so that's why I would send that off. So yeah, just to remind you, if you are interested, yeah, Paul, there is a lot of advantages in doing it manually. You understand the process of what's going on rather than using a program that might be doing a little bit more that you don't really know. Like I mentioned, if you're interested and you want to hear this actual track, you can head over to my Bandcamp, and on there you'll be able to download that. You can stream it. It's also, this remix is available on iTunes, Apple Music now, isn't it? Amazon, all the streaming sites, Spotify. My latest release is on there. But if you're interested in supporting me and you want new music every month, I'm releasing a new track every single month, and you want access to everything I've released so far, including my old album, high quality live streams, audio, and live gigs, you can get all this. It's £3 a month, and I'll be dropping another track before the end of January on here, before it goes on the streaming platforms, and there'll be one every month since then as well. You'll be the first as well to hear about any live streams that I'm doing as well. So there's benefit on there. Sorry, you don't want that one, you want that one. There's benefits of going on to onto that, to check that out as well. Let's see, any other questions as well? Interesting chain that I'm using. Yeah, thanks for that. And I'm just thinking if there's anything else I want to just check with you all about. No, I think that's all I want to go through in terms of the remix. If you've got any other questions, just put them in the comments below. I'm going to be doing some more live streams soon as well, because every single track that I'm releasing this year, I'm going to be doing a breakdown of how I made it, and all of the tracks that I'm releasing this year are on the modular. So the next few live streams that you're going to see is going to be me breaking down how I use this system in front of me to play live, and also to record all of my tracks for this year. So please do hit the bell on my YouTube channel so you know about this, or on Twitch or on Facebook, wherever you are. And I'm going to be running you through that, how I'm using it with Bitwig, and get into that side of stuff as well, rather than focusing too much on the software, because I think like a lot of you who have subscribed to this channel, you're much more into knowing what I'm doing with the modular and how I'm working with all of that. So that's all coming your way. Listen, thanks for so much joining me tonight. I wanted to keep this under an hour. Some of them have gone on a bit too long in the past. Again, if you've got any questions about anything that I've done here, do ask. I'm happy to expand on that more, answer any questions, any suggestions. I hope you like the remix, by the way. Go check it out. Stick some headphones on. It's Friday night, and get into it. Other than that, thanks everyone for joining me tonight, and have an awesome weekend. Stay safe, and Martin says yes. Thanks everyone for joining me. It's been great having you all here live with me. So take care, and I'll catch you next time for some modular behind the scenes kind of stuff as well. And go check out Bandcamp, like and subscribe. Cheers, Adam. Thanks for joining me, mate. See you later.